It was a cold evening when I walked into my mom's funeral, my heart heavy with grief. But as soon as I entered the room, my eyes landed on my sister, Rachel. I hadn't seen her in years, not since she stole everything from me, my life, my love, and my dreams. As I made my way through the mourners, a sudden chill ran down my spine. That wasn't what had me on edge, though. It was the man standing by her side, the man I knew so well. But let's go back. You need to hear this story from the start. Hi, I'm Claire, and my life was once perfect. I had everything. I had love, I had wealth, and I had a future planned with a man who was more than I ever dreamed of. But that was before Rachel, my older sister, destroyed it all. You see, my story isn't just one of betrayal. It's one of revenge, pain, and ultimately, justice. So, before we dive in, like this story, drop a comment, but don't subscribe just yet. You don't need to. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this one unfolds. Now, let's begin. I was born in a small town in Texas, in a place called Crescent Ridge, far from the glamour of the big cities. It wasn't much, but it was home. Rachel and I were close growing up. She was older, but she always had a way of making things feel just a bit more complicated. We had different worlds even then, and I never realized how vast the gap between us would become. When I was 18, I met Matt. He was everything I could have asked for: handsome, driven, kind, and incredibly wealthy. His family owned a chain of successful tech companies, and he was set to take over the family business when the time came. But he didn't act like it. He was down to earth, thoughtful, and made me feel like I was the only person who mattered in his life. We fell in love quickly, and within a few years we were planning our future together. I was happy, truly happy, until Rachel came back into the picture. Rachel had always been a bit unpredictable, to put it kindly. She would come and go in my life like a storm, and every time she left, she'd leave a trail of mess behind her. But when she heard about Matt, she saw something else. And that's when everything started to change. Matt and I had been together for 3 years when Rachel reappeared. She had been living in New York, working as an event planner, and she'd returned to Crescent Ridge for the summer. She quickly inserted herself into our lives. And at first, I didn't think much of it. It's not like Rachel was a bad person, just complicated. But over the next few months, I started to notice little things, little comments she'd make about Matt. How handsome he was, how successful he was, how he was the kind of man she had always dreamed of. I thought it was harmless at first. She was just being her usual flirty self. But then, I saw her laughing with Matt in the kitchen one evening. The way they were looking at each other, their connection. It made me uneasy, though I told myself it was just my overactive imagination. Things escalated quickly from there. One evening, Matt and I had planned a quiet dinner, but Rachel showed up unexpectedly, claiming she was lonely and wanted to spend time with us. I reluctantly agreed, but the whole evening felt off. It was as though Rachel was doing everything she could to keep Matt's attention on her. The next day, Matt and I had a huge argument. He had been distant, and when I asked him about it, he brushed it off. But I knew something was wrong. I knew Rachel was the cause, and I confronted her. That was when she finally admitted the truth. She had been seeing Matt behind my back. I was devastated. My world came crashing down. I never imagined that my own sister would betray me like that. It wasn't just about love, it was about trust. And in one moment, Rachel destroyed both. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing Matt's face when he admitted that he had fallen for Rachel, too. They were together, and I was left alone. But that wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. The years that followed were dark ones. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece. I moved away from Crescent Ridge to a small apartment in a different city, determined to start fresh. But I never forgot what Rachel did. She had everything I ever wanted, and I had nothing left. I wanted revenge, but I had to be patient. After all, what's the point of revenge if you can't savor it? 6 years passed, and I did my best to move on. I focused on my career, my independence, and my mental well-being. But just when I thought I could finally let go of the past, the universe had a cruel sense of humor. I got a call that my mom had passed away. I hadn't seen her in years, but I had to go back. And that's when I walked into the funeral home, only to freeze in shock. There they were, Rachel and Matt, standing together like they had always been. But there was one thing I didn't expect. Rachel froze, her face drained of all color, her eyes wide, locked on someone behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was, my husband, the man I had married, the man who was everything to me now, the man Rachel had stolen. He was standing right behind me, looking as surprised as Rachel did. But this wasn't the reunion I had planned. This was just the beginning. Let me know if you want to hear more, and don't forget to like and comment. You won't want to miss what happens next. I stood there, frozen, my eyes bouncing between Rachel and Matt. I could see the shock on Rachel's face, and for a split second I thought she might faint. But what really caught me off guard was the way Matt looked at me. It was like he was seeing me for the first time in years, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion. But then something else crossed his face, recognition. He knew who my husband was. And my husband, he knew exactly who Matt was. It all started to fall into place, though slowly. You see, when I'd walked into the funeral home, I didn't realize that Rachel and Matt weren't the only ones with secrets. I had a secret of my own. I had married someone far more connected, far more powerful than anyone realized. My husband, Jason, wasn't just an ordinary man. He was a billionaire businessman, someone with influence in the tech world, just like Matt once was. But unlike Matt, Jason didn't flaunt his wealth. He wasn't the kind of person to tell everyone about his riches. To Rachel and Matt, he probably seemed like a regular guy. I had kept Jason's identity under wraps for years. We had gotten married quietly, away from the eyes of our small town, in a private ceremony in a foreign country. I wanted it that way. I didn't need anyone's approval. But at that moment, seeing Rachel's face turn pale as she realized the man standing beside me wasn't just some random guy, but the one person she'd never expected to be my husband. Well, it was a moment I'd been waiting for. Jason put his hand on my back, guiding me toward the seat at the front of the room, but not before shooting a glance at Matt. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Rachel, still standing there, her mouth slightly open, was too stunned to speak. "Let's sit down," I whispered to Jason, and he nodded. We walked to the front, taking our seats, though I could feel Rachel's eyes on us the entire time. It was as though she couldn't believe what was happening. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The funeral went on, but my mind wasn't on my mother anymore. No, I couldn't stop thinking about the events that had led me to this moment. I thought of how Matt had stolen my life from me, how Rachel had betrayed me, and how somehow I had come to this point, right here in front of them all. And in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. I had waited for years for this. After the service, we gathered outside for the burial. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over everything. The air was cool, but the warmth of the past year made everything feel surreal. I could feel Rachel's eyes following me as I stood with Jason by my side. But I didn't care. Let her look. Let her wonder. She had taken everything from me once, and now I was standing here, with Jason, in front of her, with a secret she never could have predicted. As we stood by the gravesite, Jason leaned in and whispered, "You all right?" I looked up at him, meeting his steady gaze. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed the emotions I had been holding back for so long. "It's just hard, you know? Seeing her like this, seeing them like this." Jason nodded. "I get it. You've been through a lot, Claire." I turned to face him, my heart full of gratitude. I've come a long way, but I still want answers. I still need closure. I'm not going to just let this go. Jason squeezed my hand. "And you won't. You've got this." But as I turned back toward the crowd, my gaze fell on Rachel once more. She was standing with Matt, whispering to him. Their heads were close together, their conversation soft, but the tension between them was palpable. I couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. Did she feel guilty? Was she angry? Or was she just trying to figure out how to make this all go away? I wasn't going to let her. Not now. Not ever. The day dragged on, and eventually people began to leave. Jason and I stayed behind for a while, watching the last of the mourners file out. Rachel and Matt were among them, and I couldn't help but notice how Rachel's eyes lingered on me as she passed. It was almost as though she was daring me to confront her, but I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed to be smart about this. I turned to Jason. "Let's go." He nodded, and we walked away from the cemetery, the weight of the past still pressing on my chest. But I was getting stronger. I could feel it. The game had changed, and I was in control now. As we got into the car, I couldn't help but look at Jason again. "Thank you for being here. For everything." Jason smiled, his face softening. "Always, Claire." I leaned back in my seat, looking out the window as the car pulled away. The town of Crescent Ridge faded in the distance. But I knew my story wasn't over. Not yet. The worst was yet to come. But that's how revenge works. You wait for the right moment. You wait for the right time. And when the opportunity comes, you strike. And Rachel, oh Rachel, you had no idea what was coming. Don't forget to comment and let me know what you think of the story so far. You won't want to miss what happens next. The days following the funeral were a blur. I had no time to grieve, no time to feel sorrow for my mother. The past had come rushing back into my life like a flood, and I couldn't ignore it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face, frozen in shock, as she realized who my husband was. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Jason was understanding, but I could tell he was worried about me. He kept asking if I needed anything, if I wanted to talk about the past. But I didn't. Not yet. I didn't want to explain to him why I had to wait, why I couldn't just forget and move on. The truth was I needed revenge. I needed to make Rachel pay for what she'd done to me. She had ruined my life, and now it was time to take back what was mine. Rachel's face haunted me, but I knew better than to confront her too soon. Patience, after all, was key in matters of revenge, and I had learned over the years how to be patient. My time would come. It was just a week after the funeral when I saw Rachel again. It wasn't planned, but I knew it was inevitable. I was at a coffee shop in Crescent Ridge, a place I used to go to when I was younger. I hadn't planned on running into her, but there she was, sitting at a table near the window, staring out at the street. I almost turned around and left, but something stopped me. This was the perfect moment. I had waited long enough. If I was going to do this, now was the time. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to her table. She didn't notice me at first, but as I pulled out the chair and sat down across from her, her eyes flicked up, locking with mine. "Claire," she said, her voice tight. She didn't sound happy to see me, and I didn't blame her. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, though it was more of a grin than anything genuine. "I came to talk." Rachel scoffed, looking away. "What's there to talk about? You and your rich life. I'm not interested." But I wasn't going to let her brush me off. I had something to say, something she needed to hear. "You know," I said, leaning forward, "I never expected you to be the one to ruin everything. I trusted you. You were my sister." Rachel shifted in her seat, her face hardening. "I didn't ruin anything, Claire. You just didn't see what was right in front of you. Matt and I were always meant to be together." I felt a jolt of anger at her words, but I controlled myself. "Is that what you told yourself? That you were meant to be together? What about me, Rachel? What about your own sister?" She looked away, her face faltering for just a moment. "You were always the perfect one, Claire. You had everything. I just wanted a piece of it." I couldn't believe it. This was how she justified everything. It wasn't love. It was jealousy. It always had been. "You know," I said, my voice low, "I'm not here to argue with you. But you should know something. You think you've won, but you haven't. Not by a long shot." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. It means that I'm not the same person I was back then. You took everything from me, Rachel. But now, I have everything you could never have dreamed of. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I smiled again, though it wasn't a friendly smile. I have a life now. A real one. A life that's nothing like the one you took from me. The word stung, I could tell. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she wasn't ready to back down. So what, you think you've won? You think you're better than me? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. It's not about being better, Rachel. It's about making things right, and you'll see that soon enough. I stood up to leave, but before I could walk away, she called out to me. You're not going to get away with this, Claire. You'll regret it. I turned back, meeting her gaze. You're the one who will regret it, Rachel. Just wait and see. And with that, I walked out of the coffee shop, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had made my move. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and there was no going back now. Later that evening, I was sitting at home with Jason, sipping a glass of wine. He had noticed that something was off, but I kept my emotions in check. He didn't need to know all the details just yet. The plan was coming together, and Rachel would be the last to know what hit her. I'm glad you're here, Claire, Jason said, his voice soft. I know things have been tough for you lately, but I want you to know that I'm here for you no matter what. I smiled at him, grateful for his support. I know, Jason, and I appreciate it. I really do. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about making Rachel understand what it felt like to lose everything, to see the one thing she wanted slip through her fingers, just like she had done to me all those years ago. And as I sat there, I couldn't help but think about how much I enjoyed the quiet satisfaction of knowing that Rachel was already starting to panic. She had no idea what was coming for her. And when the moment came when I revealed the truth, it would destroy her. But I wasn't going to rush it. Not yet. I had all the time in the world. The game was far from over. And Rachel was about to learn just how far I was willing to go to get what was rightfully mine. The morning light sliced through the curtains, but I was already awake, heart pounding. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. I picked it up and froze. There it was on every news site, a headline in bold red letters. Claire wins $500,000 lawsuit against Rachel after secret marriage revealed. My breath caught in my throat. The article said that a judge had ruled in a sealed court filing that Rachel must pay me $500,000 in damages for fraud and emotional distress. It went on to detail how she had intentionally misled me, stolen my fiancé, and caused me years of pain. And now the judgment was final. For a moment, the world tilted. Rachel was ruined. Her wealth, her reputation, her plans, all crumbling in a single day. My victory had arrived like a thunderbolt. But then the room spun, and I realized I wasn't celebrating. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. Revenge should have felt sweeter. Instead, it felt hollow. I got out of bed and walked to the window, staring at the quiet street below in Cedar Creek Estates, a place Rachel had moved into after taking that from me. It was picturesque, manicured lawns, white picket fences, children riding bicycles. I remembered driving through here once with Rachel, before everything fell apart, and feeling a strange pang of envy at the life she was building. I turned away and walked into the kitchen. The kettle was already whistling. Jason poured 2 mugs of tea, setting one in front of me. He didn't say anything. He just handed it over. "Thank you," I whispered, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. He sat down opposite me. "What are you thinking?" I sighed, taking a slow sip. The tea was calming, but my mind raced. "I won," I said quietly, "but it doesn't feel like a win." Jason frowned. "Because you didn't want her to pay money? You wanted something else." I looked down at the table. I wanted her to feel the same pain I did, to lose everything she thought she owned. But now that it's happened, all I feel is sad. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Revenge rarely fills the void, Claire, but it does level the field. It lets you move on. I nodded, though it didn't ease the ache. I know, and I have to finish this. There's more to come. Outside, I could hear the distant hum of traffic. In the estate next door, Rachel's children, twins named Olivia and Andrew, were probably playing in the yard. I wondered what they thought when they saw the news. Their mother, humiliated in front of the world. I finished my tea and stood. I'm going to see her, I said. Jason stood as well. I'll come with you. I shook my head. No, this is my battle. But thank you. He kissed my forehead. Be safe. I grabbed my coat and keys and walked out into the crisp air. The drive to Cedar Creek Estates was short, but each red light felt like an eternity. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I rehearsed what I would say. Part of me wanted to gloat, to see her reaction when she realized I was the victor. But another part wanted closure, to look her in the eye and finally let go of the anger. I parked outside her house. It was a 2-story brick home with ivy crawling up the walls and a small garden in the front. It looked peaceful, almost innocent. I took a deep breath and walked up the path. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Rachel stood there, pale and trembling, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes were red from crying. She wore pajamas and a robe. She hadn't even bothered to dress for visitors. "Claire," she whispered, shock and fear lacing her voice. "What are you doing here?" I tilted my head. "I came to see how you're holding up." She took a step back as though afraid I would strike. I don't know what you want." I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, opening the news article. "Read this," I said, holding it up. Rachel's eyes darted across the screen. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Tears spilled down her cheeks. $5,000,000, she repeated, voice shaking. "They can't take that from me. You know I don't have that kind of money." I nodded. "Then they'll take everything you own. Your house, your cars, your savings, everything." She sank to the doorstep, burying her face in her hands. "Please," she sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I knelt down beside her, heart clenching. For a moment, I almost comforted her. But I remembered the years of torment she caused, the nights I cried myself to sleep, the dreams she stole from me. "I know," I said quietly, "but sorry won't fix this." I stood and turned to leave. Rachel's voice stopped me. "Claire, wait. What do you want from me?" I paused at the gate, looking back at her. "I want you to remember this day every time you try to hurt someone. I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. Because you took my life once, and now I have taken yours." I walked away before she could reply, the sound of her sobs fading behind me. The sun was climbing higher, warming my back. I felt the weight on my shoulders, but I also felt a strange sense of peace. The extreme blow had landed. Rachel was broken. But as I got into my car, my phone buzzed again. A notification from a social media app, one barely used. A live notification. Jason announces new CEO of Sterling Innovations, Claire Hart. My eyes widened. I knew Jason was planning something big. A new company with me at the helm. But he'd chosen this moment. He was going public live, naming me CEO of his fastest-growing tech startup. The video link was right there. I clicked it on my phone as I started the engine. The live stream image showed Jason standing on a stage, a crowd of investors and press in a sleek downtown convention center. He smiled at the camera. "Thank you all for joining me today. I have exciting news. I am stepping aside as CEO of Sterling Innovations to focus on my work as chairman, and I am proud to announce that my partner, Claire Hart, will be the new CEO." The crowd erupted in applause. I felt a surge of pride and exhilaration. They were celebrating me, my competence, my strength, my future. Then Jason looked directly into the camera and said, "Claire, I love you, and I know you will lead this company to new heights." My heart lurched. Not only had Rachel lost everything, but now the world would see me as a powerful, respected leader. I was unrecognizable from the broken girl she betrayed. And as I watched the camera pan to a stunned Rachel, who had somehow arrived at the event, the screen went black, the live stream ending. The final shot burned in my mind. Rachel's face, her mouth open in shock, her eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks as she realized she was witnessing my triumph at the very moment her world collapsed. My revenge had reached its climax. But that wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. I watched the live stream video on my phone as Rachel's face filled the screen. Her eyes were wide, her jaw dropped, and for a moment she looked as though she might faint. All around her, reporters' flashes gleamed and microphones hovered, capturing every expression of shock and disbelief. She had come to the event without knowing what would happen, and now she was trapped in the glare of my triumph. My heart pounded as I stood behind Jason on that stage, feeling the applause wash over me like a wave. The sound was deafening, hundreds of people cheering my name, thrilled to see a new leader step into the helm of Sterling Innovations. I felt powerful, unstoppable. And Rachel, she could see it all live from the audience. But when the video cut out, I folded my phone with a deep breath and let the moment sink in. The next morning, I woke to messages of congratulations pouring in from every corner of the world. Friends, old classmates, even news anchors. My inbox was full of interview requests, speaking invitations, and offers to write articles about my journey from betrayal to leadership. I smiled as I read them, sipping my coffee slowly. Jason had arranged everything perfectly. I spent the day in meetings at the new Sterling Innovations headquarters, a sleek glass tower in downtown Austin. The offices were bright, the staff friendly, and I felt a surge of excitement as I signed my first official documents. I met with the head of marketing, who showed me plans for a global campaign, and with the head of product, who unveiled prototypes of our next generation of smart devices. Every conversation filled me with hope. Yet beneath the surface, a small knot of worry twisted in my chest. I wondered where Rachel was now. How was she coping with the world watching her humiliation? Did she understand that this was only the beginning of my rise and her downfall? That evening, I returned home to find a plain envelope on the doorstep of our apartment in Cedar Creek Estates. The handwriting was unfamiliar, written in shaky letters on cheap stationery. Jason was still in the city, so I opened it alone. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a terse message. "Congratulations on your new title, Claire. But don't think you've won. Watch your back." There was no signature, no hint of who had sent it. My pulse quickened. A warning like that could only come from one person, Rachel. She had resources, cunning, and now nothing to lose. And if she was already striking back, I had to be ready. The next day at work, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. In the elevator, I caught a reflection of someone staring at me, then disappearing around a corner. In the cafeteria line, a man brushed against my arm and muttered something I couldn't hear. It felt like the calm before a storm. That night, I sat at my desk at home, reviewing the latest press coverage. I noticed a breaking news alert on my screen. Urgent! Sterling Innovations reports possible data breach. Customer financial records exposed. The headline glowed in red. My stomach dropped. The article went on to say that an anonymous hacker group claimed to have downloaded thousands of customer files, including credit card numbers and home addresses. Shares of Sterling Innovations fell sharply in after-hours trading, already down by 30%. My hands shook as I scrolled. This was not a coincidence. Someone had timed the breach announcement to hit us at our weakest moment, right after I took the CEO seat and Rachel's world crashed. It was brutal, public, and unexpected. A cold dread settled over me. The extreme blow had landed. My family's fortune, Jason's reputation, and my hard-earned credibility were at risk in a single headline. I closed my laptop, my mind racing. Rachel had struck back, and she had done it in the most devastating way imaginable. I would have to act fast. But as I looked out the window at the city lights, I realized that my greatest challenge was only just beginning. The alert popped up on my phone again. Urgent. Sterling Innovations reports possible data breach. Customer financial records exposed. My heart dropped. This was the same headline that had shattered our stock price yesterday. Now it was all anyone could talk about. Reporters were camped outside our headquarters in Spring Meadow Park, cameras focused on every entrance. I stood in the glass-walled boardroom, Jason at my side, as our IT chief explained the breach. An unknown group got in through a back door we missed. They've taken credit card numbers, home addresses, and even medical records. His voice shook. We have to tell customers today. My mind raced. I could feel sweat on my palms. This was the worst kind of attack, public, personal, and painful. But I couldn't show fear. Not now. I took a deep breath and nodded. Let's draft the notice. We need to be honest and quick. Later that afternoon, we sent out the apology email to 500,000 customers. I watched the open rate climb. With every ding of a new notification, my chest tightened. People were angry. Some wrote that they would never trust us again. Others threatened lawsuits. I shut my laptop and slipped out of the office. Outside, the sun was bright over Maplewood Hills, the upscale neighborhood where I lived. It felt too peaceful. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalks, and neighbors watered flower beds. It was a normal Friday, but my world felt anything but normal. I drove home slowly, thinking about the headache I'd get later. I needed fresh air. I parked near the community lake and walked down the gravel path. The water was still, reflecting the green trees and the blue sky. A family of ducks swam by. For a moment, I almost relaxed. The breeze was gentle, and I could almost pretend everything was fine. A jogger passed me, waving. I managed a weak smile. Big day at work, I said. He nodded sympathetically and ran on. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes, listening to the rustle of leaves. I thought of Rachel, how she had hit me when I was at my strongest, and now how she had caught me at my weakest. I felt anger flare up again, but this time it was mixed with fear. What else could she do? How low would she go? I opened my eyes and saw my reflection in the water. I looked tired but determined. I stood up and took my phone from my pocket. I typed a quick message to Jason. Meeting at home in 30. I turned to leave the path when I heard it, a loud crash behind me. I spun around, hard in my throat. A large branch had fallen off a dead tree just as I stepped by. It lay on the ground where I had been sitting. I swallowed hard, staring at the heavy limb. The branch was cracked at the base, as if cut on purpose. On its surface, someone had scratched 2 words, "Watch out." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't an accident. Rachel was making her move again, and this time she had turned nature into a weapon. My phone buzzed with another alert. Security. Unauthorized access to your home surveillance. I stared at the screen, breath caught in my throat. The next strike was coming, and I had no idea where. Don't forget to comment and let me know your thoughts. You won't believe what happens next. I jolted upright on the bench beside the lake when I saw the branch crack and tumble to the ground just inches from where I had been sitting. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would burst. I stared at the broken wood, at the words "watch out" etched deep into the grain, and I knew my sister had gone beyond threats. She was trying to kill me. I ran to my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. As I drove home through Maplewood Hills, every dark window and silent street corner felt like an ambush. My phone rang. It was Jason. "I'm on my way," I rasped. "Someone just tried to drop a tree branch on me." "I'm calling the police," he said, voice tight. "Meet me at home. Stay in the car." I pulled into our driveway at Cedar Creek Estates and sat behind the wheel, chest heaving. Sirens wailed in the distance and drew closer. The front door opened, and Jason rushed out, his suit jacket flapping around him. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling me from the car and guiding me inside. I nodded, too shaken to speak. "She wants me dead," I whispered. He wrapped me in his arms. "They'll find her." The next day, detectives searched my property, dusting for fingerprints on the branch and tracing the branches to a fallen oak in the nearby park. I sat in the living room with Jason as they questioned me. "Do you know anyone who'd want to harm you?" one of them asked. I looked them in the eye. "My sister, Rachel. She's the only one with a reason." They nodded and left to follow up on leads. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk in my new office and opened a file Jason had left for me. Security footage from the night before. I watched as a dark figure climbed over my fence, wielding a small hatchet. The figure slipped on wet grass, lost balance, and cut away at the branch before pushing it over. Then she ran off into the shadows. My blood ran cold. It was Rachel. I closed the file and stared out the window at the Austin skyline. It was time to end this. That evening, I arranged a stealth meeting with a trusted private investigator, Carlos Reyes, in a dimly lit cafe in Spring Meadow Park. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "I got everything you asked for," he said quietly. "Financial records, email logs, even travel receipts. It's all here." He tapped the folder. "She's been funneling money through shell companies, buying weapons, renting a safe house north of here." I nodded, flipping through pages that detailed every transaction. There were bank transfers of $200,000 to an arms dealer, hotel stays in abandoned motels, and phone calls at all hours to untraceable numbers. "She's armed and dangerous," Carlos continued. "She's planning something bigger." My heart hammered. I remembered the branch, the hack, the breach. I thought of every threat she'd made. Enough was enough. Over the next 24 hours, Jason and I worked with the FBI. We set a trap at a charity gala for victims of violent crime, an event Rachel could not resist. We went live on stage to announce a major donation from Sterling Innovations, knowing she'd show up to humiliate me again. The night of the gala, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and guests in tuxedos. I stood beside Jason under the bright lights, smiling for the cameras. My chest tightened with nerves, but I held my smile. Behind the curtain, I heard whispering, Rachel's voice. Moments later, she stormed into the ballroom, eyes wild, hair disheveled, a pistol clutched in her hand. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she pointed at me. "You think you can destroy me and walk away," she snarled. "This ends tonight." I froze for an instant, then stepped forward, calm and collected. The FBI agents we'd placed around the room moved in quietly. I raised my hand and gestured to Rachel. "Rachel," I said, voice steady. "It ends now." She leveled the gun at me, her finger tightening on the trigger. The entire room fell silent, every eye locked on us. And then shouts rang out. 2 agents tackled her from behind, wresting the pistol from her hand. It went off, the shot ringing like thunder, piercing the hush. A single bang that echoed in my chest. Guests screamed, chairs clattered, and I felt the hot blast of fear and triumph wash over me. Rachel screamed too, part in anger, part in terror, as she was handcuffed on the marble floor. Blood spattered on the white gown of a nearby volunteer. A woman cried out and dropped to her knees. I wanted to run to her, to comfort her, but my eyes were fixed on my sister. Rachel's face was pale, eyes wild with betrayal and shock. She looked at me, her mouth moving, but no sound coming out. Then her gaze dropped to the gun on the floor, to the stain on the carpet, a testament to how far she had fallen. I stepped forward and stood over her, the glittering gala behind me, the crowd in stunned silence. My heart was pounding, but I felt no joy, only a hollow relief. It was over. 6 years of pain, betrayal, and revenge all led to this moment. And as I looked down at Rachel on the floor, I realized how different we had become. I walked away, leaving her behind in handcuffs and tears, stepping into a new life that she could never touch again. Don't forget to comment and tell me what you think. This story may be done, but the echoes of revenge will last forever.